Hey guys, it's Bree here at Blossom and Branch Farm, and today it's going to be a short and sweet video about fungus gnats and seed starting. Now, if you're tuning into this video, it's probably because you're having problems with fungus gnats, and so I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're going to get right into the information here. First of all, fungus gnats, why are they problematic? Well, it's not really the adult fungus gnats that are the problem. It's the larvae of the fungus gnat. Fungus gnats lay their eggs in the soil, and their larva is actually what's problematic. So it's the larvae that are eating the roots of our seedlings. This can lead to seedling death. This is obviously a problem if you're a gardener and you want to grow anything, because fungus gnats can very quickly overcome your seed starting space. So I'm going to give you my 4 tips for how I help mitigate fungus gnats, and then you'll be on your way and hopefully fixing your issues. So number 1 is prevention. I always like to keep the yellow sticky traps in my seed starting space. If you start seeing fungus gnats, you know right away to start treating for them. Otherwise, if you don't have those sticky traps in there, you might start to notice the fungus gnats early, but often I find that I don't notice them flying around until it's already a little bit late. So I like to keep those yellow sticky traps in my seed starting space early on, and that way I know when I'm starting to have a fungus gnat problem. That being said, don't transfer those sticky traps outside. Whatever you do, keep those inside in your home. Please do not take them outside when you're hardening off seedlings. Make sure those stay inside because they can attract and trap things like bees. They'll even tangle up, and they can even tangle up birds like hummingbirds in them. They can get stuck on there, and it's a really terrible thing. And if you've already started getting fungus gnats, it will also help you to put these around because it will help capture the adults and keep them from laying more eggs in your soil. Oh, I just realized I actually have an extra tip. All right, so 5 tips. Tip number 2, don't keep your soil too moist. So it's always good practice when we are seed starting indoors to let our seedlings dry out slightly in between waterings. I know this can be scary because there's a fine line, right, between letting them dry out and then all of a sudden they're dead. So, but as they get a little bit bigger, they're a little bit more resilient. And at that stage, we should be letting them dry out more in between waterings. Once they've got their second set of true leaves, we can really let them dry out quite a bit. And just letting that soil dry out a bit will help because the fungus gnat larvae and eggs really can't survive in dry soil. They will struggle. So they will thrive in soil that is constantly moist, and especially soil that's over wet. Tip number 3 is keep a fan on in your seed starting space. So keeping a fan on in your seed starting space will help circulate the air. It physically prevents the fungus gnats from being able to land on your soil and lay their eggs as easily. Now, they'll still probably be able to even if you have a fan going, but a fan will help. So keep that fan going, but bear in mind that that fan is probably going to lead to drier seedlings faster, so you might have to bump up your watering schedule. Tip number 4 is mosquito bits. You've probably seen these around at the garden center. Mosquito dunks are often recommended for outdoor spaces. They will kill the larvae of things like mosquitoes and fungus gnats, but they're not toxic to other things. The common advice that I hear to use mosquito bits is to create a tea, to soak the bits in some water and water with that tea. I actually don't like to do it that way. I would advise against doing that. I think it's a lot of work. It's fussy to make this tea, and you really need to make one batch at a time because if you let it sit, it gets stinky. So it's pretty unrealistic for most home gardeners to be making a batch of this tea every single time they water, and most people just forget to do it. The better thing to do is to just take those mosquito bits, and I'll put a link to our storefront down below where you can find them, or you can find them at any really gardening store. The best thing to do is just to sprinkle those bits on top of your seed starting soil directly and then water them in. You can repeat that every 3 weeks if you're still having problems, but I find that after 3 weeks, as long as I treat all of my soil at one time, it's gone. So you can use that BT, those mosquito bits sprinkled on top, but you also will want to treat all of your soil at once. So even though you might think that you only have fungus gnats in one tray, treat all of your trays because those fungus gnats might be laying eggs in all of your other trays. You just haven't seen them flying around there. So treat all of your soil in your seed starting space at one time if you're going to go with that BT mosquito bit method. My final tip on how to help prevent fungus gnats is to put your seedlings outside as often as you can. Now, this also has some other side benefits, but first let's talk about the fungus gnat bit. So being outside, your seedlings are exposed to more temperature, they're exposed to more sunlight, they're exposed to more wind, more breezes, potentially beneficial insects. And so by taking your seedlings outside as often as you can, you're really going to help minimize your fungus gnat issue. So I tend to do this here in early spring. So even though it's spring, we will sometimes get days, that are in the 60s. And on those days, I'll take my seedlings out for a little field trip and put them on the deck, and I'll put them in the sun. And I like to put them in a semi-sheltered spot because they're still usually small and they're not quite ready to be fully exposed yet. So maybe a spot that gets morning sun and afternoon shade, and I'll put them outside as often as I can on those nice warm days. And just by doing that, you'll find that that helps a lot with the fungus gnat issue, but also the other thing that that's helping with is hardening off. So once it's time to harden off your seedlings, they've already been exposed to a lot of these outdoor situations, so they're not going to be quite as sensitive as if you hadn't done this. Now, the last little bonus tip I'm going to give is just to use quality soil. I think we all have tales of different soils that we've had experiences with having fungus gnats from. And often it's because, I'll get a seedling gifted to me from a fellow gardener and maybe they had it, or I buy in a plant and that plant had it in the soil. It's just, don't blame necessarily. I know it can be easy to say, oh, this soil came with fungus gnats in it, and that might be true sometimes. That's why I like to use the Fox Farms potting soil. Yes, it's expensive, but I've never had a fungus gnat issue that I've noticed from it. Versus some other ones that I've used in the past. I'm not going to name names, but you guys feel free to name names down below. If there's a soil that you found you've had a lot of problems with fungus gnats, or one that you found you've not had a lot of problems with, feel free to put those down below. All right, I hope this helps if you're having fungus gnat issues. It's that time of year. Don't feel bad if you are. I think all gardeners deal with it. Now you have some tools and some tricks to help you get rid of them. All right, guys, if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. It means a lot to us here at the farm, and we'll see you guys around here next time.